Welcome to the Persecution Report. I'm Greg Musselman. Coming up, officials in Eritrea continue to imprison evangelical Christians. Also, an elderly Christian couple is arrested in Iran for their Christian activities. Later, this North Korean Christian woman has endured incredible heartache and pain during her life.
When I almost died in Mongolia, I prayed for God's help. My baby died, my friend died, and God didn't answer my prayers. At the time, I was bitter, but God gave me the heart to leave.
In spite of all she's been through, Yang is determined not to live in bitterness, but to serve Jesus Christ all the days of her life. Her incredible story is coming up on the Persecution Report. A Christian mother of 4 was recently killed by Islamic militants in a village on the outskirts of Mogadishu, Somalia. The militants, who belong to the insurgent group Al-Shabaab, arrested 36-year-old Asha Mabirwa outside her home in Werbigli village. According to one of her relatives, Asha was killed the next evening when the militants cut her throat in front of local people. Asha had reportedly been receiving threatening messages after Al-Shabaab members monitored her telephone conversations with a relative. One of Asha's relatives had phoned her 3 days prior to make arrangements for moving her family out of the area for their safety. Al-Shabaab militants were reportedly able to monitor the conversation and confirm that Asha had become a Christian. Asha's husband fled to an undisclosed location with the couple's 4 children. Pakistani police are threatening the father of an 18-year-old Christian man who officers raped, killed, and threw into a sewer, according to area Christians. Christian residents of Actor Colony, Karachi, pulled the body of Wakas Gill from the sewer, then protested an alleged police cover-up by chanting slogans against the officers at the local police station. They said the officers kidnapped and sodomized Gill before shooting him dead. The victim's father, Parvez Gill, told Compass Direct that 4 police officers took his son without warrant and without making any charges. High-level officers in the police department reluctantly filed charges against the 4 policemen after the public protest. He added, "Police are now threatening us and the other Christians of Actor Colony that we retract the charges." Officials in the East African nation of Eritrea arrested 30 Christians for praying at a private house in Asmara, the nation's capital. Some of the Christians were released after being detained for their faith. Security officials arrested the Christians and took them to the police station. The detained believers are members of the Philadelphia Church, an evangelical church outlawed in Eritrea. Evangelical churches have been forced to go underground in the country since 2002, when officials required all religious groups to register. Many Eritrean Christians have fled the country to neighboring nations as refugees. More than 3,000 Eritreans have been detained for their faith in Christ. Most are kept in underground dungeons, metal shipping containers, and military barracks. Several Christians have died while imprisoned due to torture and lack of medical attention. Several Iranian agents of the Revolutionary Court came to the house of 65-year-old Hassan Razavi Darakhshan and his 61-year-old wife, Pariya. Pariya was the only one home at the time, so the officers demanded she phone her husband and that he return home immediately. Razavi obliged, and the officers took the couple into custody. After many attempts to gain information on the couple's whereabouts, colleagues and relatives learned that they had been arrested and taken to a detention center. The couple's house is reportedly missing several personal items, including Bibles, Christian literature, and CDs. It is suspected they were targeted for hosting prayer and worship meetings in their house. The couple's arrest is the latest in a series of recent crackdowns on Christian converts from Islam and believers involved in evangelism in Iran. 5 North Koreans were shot dead and 2 others wounded by North Korean border guards on the Chinese side of the border recently when they tried to flee North Korea. The high-level source in China said the 7 individuals left Yangon province and walked across the frozen Yalu River to reach the Chinese side. 5 of them died instantly under intense gunfire by North Korean border guards who ran after them. The 2 others were wounded and taken to the north. North Korean border guards have never before shot at defectors once they reached the Chinese side. And while there's no reason to suspect that those killed were Christians, certainly everyone who crosses the border illegally will be impacted by this shocking change in security measures. In our next report, we'll meet Sister Yang, not a real name, a North Korean defector who became a Christian. And she has endured a lot of hardship during her life, but that hasn't turned her into a bitter person.
I was doing a noodle and rice business in North Korea, and as I learned in China, I prayed when I was doing my business. The lady beside me asked what I was doing. I didn't say anything. Some of my relatives from China also saw me praying and told the lady I was a Christian, and she told the authorities that I was a Christian.
The authorities brought Yang in for questioning, but they couldn't find any evidence that she'd become a Christian. Doing so is seen as an act of treason in North Korea, as only the worship of the Kim family is allowed. The lack of evidence didn't stop authorities from arresting Yang and beating and torturing her. This went on for a month.
They used a shovel to beat people. That's what they did to me. Your body becomes blue everywhere. After I was released, I was followed everywhere by the authorities. I was not allowed to speak anywhere I went. My in-laws didn't even treat me like a human, so I decided to leave the country again.
Yang went back to China in 2003, and while there, she was kidnapped. She was sold into slavery as a maid and repeatedly raped.
I was sold to a businessman who owned a department store. I was locked in the house. I was a slave. The telephone line was cut and the doors were locked from the outside, so I couldn't run away. I was a slave there for 1 month and 13 days before I escaped.
Yang's troubles in China continued, as she didn't speak the language and survival was extremely difficult. In 2006, while 6 months pregnant, she and a friend decided to try to make it to South Korea. With the help of some brokers, they were brought near the Mongolian border. It was winter and very cold. The ground was covered in snow. Yang and her friend got lost, and for 3 days they couldn't find the guards at the border garrison. Yang miscarried and placed the baby in a handbag.
I didn't know what to do, but I had to walk. So I hung the bag around my neck and walked all night. All around us were skeletons and bones. Those bones were North Korean defectors. My friends started to rip my clothes because I didn't give her bread.
Yang didn't have any food. Her friend was hallucinating. Yang was devastated as she watched her friend die in the snow in the bitterly cold temperatures of Mongolia.
Her heart finally stopped, but I will never forget her eyes. She was crying and looked at me. After my friend died, I think I was in shock. I fell asleep. I woke up. I felt warm. I thought it was sunshine, and I had one hand on my friend and the other hand on my baby. It was still dark. I got up and prayed for the Lord to save me.
2 more days would pass before Yang was finally discovered by patrolling Mongolian border guards. They found her lying in the snow. She was unable to open her eyes or move. Yang was taken to a hospital in Mongolia. The bodies of her friend and baby were left behind. Yang suffered severe frostbite. Very little could be done by the medical staff in Mongolia, so Yang was flown to Seoul to the South Korean Armed Forces Medical Command. Because of the frostbite, all of Yang's toes were amputated on her left foot. There was also some damage to her right foot, and a nerve from her right thigh was transplanted to the left foot. 5 years later, Yang is still in constant pain. With all that Yang has been through, it's amazing that she's been able to keep going and look to the future. She credits her faith in Jesus Christ as the reason she has hope, but admits her faith has been tested.
When I almost died in Mongolia, I prayed for God's help. My baby died, my friend died, and God didn't answer my prayers. At the time, I was bitter, but God gave me the heart to leave, and I kept praying to leave. He saved me. Now I have become a faithful Christian and to be a missionary for God. I am learning about God, and I will live for God.
What an amazing lady. She has been through so much. Yang has a passion to reach the people of North Korea wherever they live in the world with the message of God's love, and is now preparing for full-time ministry. You can view the full report on Yang by going to persecution.tv. And you can also find out what the Voice of the Martyrs Canada with our partners in Seoul are doing to equip the North Korean Christians to reach other North Koreans with the gospel of Jesus Christ by going to persecution.tv and looking for the report called North Korea Underground University. Please continue to pray for Yang and our persecuted brothers and sisters in North Korea and around the world. Remember, when one part of the body suffers, we all suffer. Thanks for watching the Persecution Report. Goodbye, and God bless.
For more information on the ministry of the Voice of the Martyrs and ways in which you can help a persecuted church, please visit our website at persecution.net. That's persecution.net.